Time to wake up. It's Saturday morning. Find some milk and cereal. Grab a bowl and spoon. No, a bigger spoon. Head to the living room and take a seat on the floor while Joseph and Chris present to you Saturday Morning Cartoon!
Hello everybody, welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoon Boom! This is a show where we wake up with the Saturday morning sun, plopped on all four of the big old sugar cereal, and watch our favorite cartoons, both old and new. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Chris.
And this morning, we watched Animaniacs! So the theme song, very memorable, obviously. It's something that I'm pretty sure I could do the whole thing. Although there were changes to it throughout that we saw, especially since we jumped around through the seasons. The one in particular was instead of Bill Clinton plays the sax, it's we pay tons of income tax. And also, and they took out the Pinky and the Brain part because they got their own spinoff show and it turned into something about Scratch and Sniff and the nurse and something else, I think. I can't remember that part.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice, but I think it's because after watching it, the first episode, I think I skipped ahead.
Oh, no, I can't skip that theme song.
Yeah. I'm a failure.
This is why I'm disappointed in you. It makes sense now.
Yeah.
So the show Animaniacs ran from 93 to 98, created by Tom Ruegger, produced by Amblin Entertainment and Warner Brothers Animation, ran for 5 seasons, 99 episodes on the Fox Kids Network from 93 to 95 and the WB from 95 to 98. For a short synopsis, Animaniacs features a large cast of characters whose predominant personalities are the Warner Brothers, Yakko, Wakko, and their sister Dot, who have a great time creating havoc and mayhem in the lives of everyone they meet.
That is pretty much to a T, the show.
Yeah.
But there's like tons of other I don't know, this is like a Looney Tunes type gig where there's tons of other cartoon shorts within this one. So there's a lot of other characters with all kinds of different stories going on.
The format's like pretty much 3 episodes or 3 like mini episodes per episode, but that's not like a hard and fast rule because sometimes it jumps around. Sometimes there's 4, sometimes there's less.
Yeah.
And sometimes, just like the last episode we watched, one of them runs for the majority of the time and the others are like very tiny segments. So it's kind of just whatever works per episode, but it does work. So who are some of the actors who played in this show?
All right, so there was quite a bit of, there's a lot of actors in this. So I'm not going to get too detailed into their backgrounds, especially because most of these are going to be people that you've heard of before. So for the voices of Yakko, Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and Pinky, we had Rob Paulsen. Definitely, obviously he's one of the ones that we talk about a lot on our podcast, along with some of these other ones. The voice of Wakko was Jess Harnell. We haven't talked about him too much, but he's also known as the voice of Crash Bandicoot. So there's the thing for you. The voice of Dot, Hello Nurse, and Marita was Tress MacNeille. She also did a whole bunch of additional voices for this show. Her voice is in everything, especially if it's done by Fox. The voices of Ralph the Security Guard, Thaddeus Plotz, Buttons, Runt, Flavio, and Steven Spielberg were Frank Welker. Of course, because he's in every cartoon ever made.
Of course.
The voice of Brain, Squit, who is the gray pigeon of the Good Feathers, was Maurice LaMarche. The voice of Slappy Squirrel was Sherry Stoner. The voice of Skippy Squirrel was Nathan Ruger. The voice of Bobby, another one of the Good Feathers, the blue one, was John Mariano. The voice of Pesto, the purple pigeon thing, was Chick Venera. The voice of Rita was Bernadette Peters. The voice of Mindy was Nancy Cartwright, who you might recognize her as the voice of Bart Simpson. And then finally, the voice of Minerva Mink was Julie Brown. So, there's tons of characters, obviously, because I named so many. And at first, I was going to be like, okay, well, the main characters are Yakko, Wakko, and Dot. I'll just put them down. This will be an easy one. But then, the very first episode, we saw every single one of these other characters. So I was like, well, dang, now I guess I got to add everybody. So, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's hard to pay respect to the show without paying respect to all the characters there are. And there are so many. But yeah, the majority of them are very memorable.
The only ones that we don't see much of throughout the course of that show is probably the hippos, Marita and Flavio. At least speaking parts. I don't think they usually have very many speaking parts, whereas the rest typically do.
Yeah, they were removed a little bit later in the show because they weren't very popular characters with the audience.
Right. I think Minerva Mink probably isn't around as much either, but she shows up from time to time.
She got removed because she was too sexy for the audience.
Figured something like that was
it was
going to happen.
No, literally it was like too much sex appeal or something like that. And so they had to take out a cartoon Minx for that reason. So that's interesting. And I don't remember her character that well, so I can't attest to that, but I trust him.
Oh yeah. No, I do. I definitely do. And we'll just leave it at that.
That's what made me a man.
Exactly.
So for a few tasty marshmallows out of our big bowl of Animaniacs cereal, the shape of Dot's head mimics the shape of the Warner Brothers Shield logo, which I never really thought about, but after I read that, I was looking at it and I'm like, yeah, I could see that because it's got the way her head just kind of curls down or her hair does. I mean, intentional or not, I'm sure it was probably intentional, but
I was trying to figure out what exactly the Warner Brothers are because they kind of look like cats because of the faces and the fact that they have what almost looks like fur around their jaws or something that, they kind of stick out to the sides a little bit, but they have long ears, not quite as long as a rabbit's, but somewhere in between there.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was ever like they meant them to look like a specific thing, but if anything, I think they look more like cats than anything else.
Yeah. They were supposed to be, that was part of the joke was even when asked in the show, they're just like, we're the Wanners. And it's like, okay, well, whatever.
Right.
And, they're designed to look like basically the really generic cartoons of the 1930s to kind of match the story here. And so they're
very black and white.
Yeah. They're just wacky Toon characters. They're basically like whatever kind of animal from Toonland.
They look like some sort of bastardization of Felix the cat. In a way,
yeah. I bet there was inspiration from him.
Yeah,
I mean, originally they were supposed to be ducks, but then, no, I'm gonna go into the marshmallow that actually says that before I just start talking. So, okay, the water tower where the Wanners live and many other features of the Warner Brothers lot are rather accurate representations of the lot in Burbank, California. Although the real water tower is all gold and not red on top, so. A lot of the stuff you see in the actual show is kind of a representation of, at least at the time, what the Burbank, California studio looked like. The show, during its initial run, was more popular with teenagers and adults than children, and this became a problem as WB always placed it inside of their Kids WB programming block, which eventually caused the series to be canceled, as sponsors of the block felt uneasy about footing the bill for an audience to whom they couldn't sell products. People who were, paying for it, they're just like, nah, like it doesn't work because we can't put kids ads in this because that's not who's watching. And so that among, maybe other reasons, I don't know, but specifically, this is the primary reason it got canceled. DC Comics published an Animaniacs comic book from 95 to 2000, which I do not remember, but it ran for 59 issues plus 2 specials. So it seems like it would have run across them, but I don't ever remember seeing that.
Yeah, that's obscure. That's a really weird one for them to run with. Did this occur after the show was canceled, or was this during?
This is during, because the show ran till 98, and this was 95 when it started.
Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I just wasn't reading as many comics at the time or something, but I don't ever remember seeing that, especially not from the primary DC brand. When Tom Ruegger created Buster Bunny for Tiny Toon Adventures in 1990, he wanted to create a catchphrase to parallel Bug's "What's up, Doc?" All he could think of was an old vaudeville standby, "Hello, nurse."
Nice.
Yeah, but that made no sense for the character Buster Bunny to be saying. So then he just brought it over with Yakko and Wakko when they're obviously greeting the attractive assistant nurse. I had never thought about that and how closely it's like, "What's up, Doc? Hello, nurse." Like that. It's so simple and straightforward, but it never crossed my mind.
No, me either. Man, you just kind of blew my mind with that one. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Exactly. Like that. I didn't even think about that at all.
Oh, so that makes me wonder, since Minerva Mink got removed from the show, did the nurse get removed too at some point?
I don't think so. I didn't hear anything about that.
Well, that's strange because she was drawn way more risque than I think Minerva probably was, but
yeah, but I think it was less about the style, the art style, and more about just her mannerisms. Because the nurse doesn't really try to act sexy, but Minerva Mink, like that's what her thing was.
So it was more of like her character than
exactly a combination of the two. Yeah, many different last lines were used for the show's theme song. The most frequent was "Here's the show's namey," but others include Shirley MacLaine, Citizen Caney, Tarzan and Janie, Pinky and the Brainy, Come Back Shaney, Where's Lon Chaney, and Dana Delaney. And that's it.
I mean, and when it was Lon Chaney there,
that's awesome. And when it was on Nick TV, it was Nicktoons TV. It was always Nick-a-Laney because, of course, Nickelodeon had to take something.
You know, I never knew that they were on Nicktoons because I had always watched this on Kids WB.
Yeah, same here. I watched it during its original run.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was weird to me because I didn't see anything about it being on Nick. I didn't dig too deep into that, but then like this specific tidbit was saying that. So maybe it was just after the fact, some reruns or something. I don't know. They were supposed to be ducks originally, and then they didn't want to seem like they were copying off of DuckTales. And so then it changed to them being like ink blots or something. And so, it went through a whole lot of different things. They were going to be ducks called Yacky, Smacky, and Wacky, but
that's awful.
It was too similar to DuckTales, obviously. Well, not the names, but just the being ducks. And the three were then changed into Platypi, and then
Are you serious?
And then into Bosco-like ink blots. And along the way, they gained a female friend. And finally, like after all of that craziness, Yacky became Yakko. Smacky and Wacky were combined into Wakko. And then the female friend who was added in was named Dot and made into their sister. So it was kind of like great that it ended up where it finally did, but it was a trip getting there.
I have a question. Maybe you were going to get to this, but is there a reason that like because season 1 was so long, it's like 65 episodes. Season 2 only got 4 episodes, which is really weird. Season 3 got 13 episodes. Season 4 got 8. Season 5 got 9. So do they account for why the amount of episodes dropped so dramatically?
No, you know what? As much as I read through things, like I didn't see anything about that, like not even a mention of it. So I did see that is the case because I watched it on Hulu. The seasons are broken out so weird. I don't know if they just labeled them seasons after the fact or what happened, but yeah, it was so sparsed out.
Yeah, that's very strange.
Yeah. So memories of the show, you obviously have some. Do you remember it fondly?
I mean, it was never my favorite show, but I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of the songs they did. Like I remember the one where they taught you all the countries around the world. That was fun. There's a lot of the. What's interesting, I didn't care for the Warners that much. I liked most of the other characters more. I liked Pinky and the Brain a lot. I liked Slappy Squirrel. I think Rita and Rolf were probably my favorite.
It was Rita and Runt.
Runt, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
Runt, yeah. I think Rita and Runt were probably my favorite. I don't know why. I just liked those two quite a bit. But
something I read about Rita and Runt real quick was I can't remember what the actress's name was who played Rita, but they had to take Rita and Runt out of the show eventually because she became too expensive to continue being on the show. Like
really?
Yeah, the voice actress just began costing too much because she's like a classic actress too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was Bernadette Peters, and she is a Broadway. Well, I don't know if I'd say star, but I knew that she performed on Broadway quite often. That's too bad. Man, it seems like as the show went on and on, they had to keep like getting rid of more and more characters, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, they had to keep kind of parsing it down. Yeah, I have pretty fond memories of it too. Like there's a lot of it that just is stuck in my mind forever. Like, do you remember, and we didn't see it in the episodes we watched all, but do you remember Chicken Boo?
That sounds very familiar.
Okay, I'm going to sing the theme song for you because this is in my head forever. It's Chicken Boo, what's the matter with you? You don't act like the other chickens do. You wear a disguise, look like human guys, but you're not a man, you're a chicken, Boo.
Yes, I do.
Do you remember that?
He was like a rooster dude, right? And he was always dressed as a human?
Exactly. He was just a giant rooster, and he just always had, or a chicken or whatever, and always had men's clothes on to try to disguise himself. And everyone fell for it, and that was the best part. Like, he didn't look anything like a person, but everyone, anytime he dressed up, everyone thought he was a man.
Yeah, he didn't speak or anything either, from what I remember.
No,
he just showed up wearing human clothes, and people just accepted him as a person, and they thought he was like great, and
he would cluck, and he would like peck at the ground like at seeds and stuff like they do, and people were still just like, oh man, that was the best part, was how straight they played it. Oh
yeah,
so I remember that one well. Yeah, the country song is United States, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Haiti,
right.
Jamaica, Peru.
There was also, I think, an episode where they, it might have been just briefly, but they crossed over with Tiny Toon Adventures, which was fun.
I don't remember that. I didn't see that one.
And I remember Elmira showing up with Pinky and the Brain at some point.
Yeah, I think it branched off into Elmira and the Brain or something.
Yeah.
But I never saw that, so I don't remember. Maybe it was later in the episodes or seasons. The characters that I didn't remember were like the two hippos. Like, I don't even remember their names. Yeah, I didn't remember them, but then seeing them, it kind of refreshed my memory a bit. But otherwise, yeah, like most of these characters, it's like taking me back to childhood.
It was 93? Yeah, we would have been 8.
So yeah, I think it was a perfect time for us, even though a lot of the jokes were like too, not mature for us, but like we wouldn't have gotten a lot of them. Right, It was still visually entertaining. So let's go ahead and jump into the 3 episodes we watched for today's show. The very first episode, highest rated episode, and finally random listener's chosen episode. Order may vary depending on how these episodes fall chronologically, but of course we have to start with the very first episode, which is De-Zanitized, The Monkey Song, and Nighty-Night, Season 1, Episode 1. So again, these are 3-parters, so we'll be brief about all 3 parts, because otherwise this would go on for hours.
Right away, I could tell the announcer was Frank Welker. Like the very first voice you heard, you're like,
because it sounds... Because it reminded me of Fred a little bit.
Well, you know, the voice he was using was the same voice he uses for Nibbler from Futurama.
Oh, yes.
Whenever Nibbler actually talks. Yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of telling the story of the Animaniacs, how these like writers created them. They were too wacky. They started destroying the studio, so they had to lock them away in the water tower. And then years later, they escaped. And that's what starts the show Animaniacs.
Yeah, they were made in the 30s and they came out in, I guess it was present day 90s at the time.
Yeah.
And so not that they were even in place back then, but they're out of place and kind of out of time here as well. But they're just complete chaos. Like,
right, yeah.
There's very little reason to the things that they do aside from causing ruckus.
One of the jokes I like, and they do this a lot, is they bring in lots of celebrities from the time period. So they had the guard who was Ralph. He working the lot, you know, the front, and he lets in a guy that I think was supposed to be like Bruce Willis, but they just called him what was like Mr. like movie star of the time or something like that. And, and then they let in, and then Porky Pig is the next one that comes in. So it's funny because they treat the Looney Tunes characters, because this is all Warner Brothers, as like celebrities on par with like, you know, live action A-list celebrities and stuff. So you see a lot of them intermingling, which is kind of fun. It's
combining the live action stars into this animated world and treating it like they've always been together.
And so like the main part of this first episode was basically Dr. Otto Scratch and Sniff, who was he was like a therapist to the stars on the Warner Brothers lot, and how he's basically telling the story of how the Animaniacs ruined his career. Which it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, obviously you're supposed to like the Animaniacs, but you do kind of feel bad for the guy.
It's funny coming into it where he's got not a full head of hair, but he's got a lot of hair.
It's
like
very
coming
long
off the sides. Yeah, yes. Almost like Einstein type hair. As the episode progresses, you see him having to but you see him just out of frustration pulling his own hair out, because they're non-responsive to any of the things that he's trying to use as a psychiatrist. He starts with Dot, and then he starts trying to do like an ink blot test with her. And she's essentially insulting the ink blots, like, oh, that's bad art and stuff like that. And he's like, well, I didn't draw it. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, well, whoever did is not a good artist. Yeah. And then she's like, well, what do you see? And she's just like, bad art. And don't you see a butterfly? And she's like, no, this is a butterfly. And she just again, it's Toon World, so she just kind of rips it off the page and forms it into a butterfly that flies off. And so he pulls out a little bit of his hair there, but she's definitely not the worst of it.
There's one thing that surprised me. There's a lot of adult things that get said in this cartoon that I had no idea as a kid, or just I wouldn't have thought of as, ooh, why? I can't believe they said that.
There's so much hidden innuendos and adult humor in here. And
there is a lot of innuendo in here.
When asked about it, the producers are just like, we honestly don't know how we got away with all this. It's one of those things where you just push it forward and you wait for it to get rejected. And if it doesn't, it goes through. And in their case, most of it was able to just go through. The infamous one, the one that all people know at this point, and if you don't, you should look it up because I'm not going to go really into it, but just look up Animaniacs fingerprints. Prince.
Oh, yes, I do remember that one.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to go into it, but please look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. With Wakko, when he starts trying to psychoanalyze him, he's just asking him, vague questions like, "What's on your mind?" And he's just being very literal about it, well, my hat, my skin, my hair, and then just stuff like that. And it's just what are you feeling? My shirt, my nose, and it just goes on like that. It's just your basic gag, your basic treating something like that very literally, and pulls more hair out. And Yakko, it's just say any word that comes to your mind, and that giving them freedom to do anything is just asking for trouble.
What's interesting too is their voices. So Don has a very cutesy voice. Yakko, Yakko talks like a cartoon, kind of high pitched. But Wakko talks like Ringo Starr or something from the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly.
He talks like this all the time. It's strange, but it's key to that character, I think,
Yeah, somehow it's weird that it works for them. But
yeah, it is. It shouldn't work, but it works.
All this leads up to him just pulling all his hair out. The way that it leads into it, he's on the couch talking to another psychiatrist, and then when it cuts back in, we see that he's been talking to, or at least the psychiatrist has been replaced by all three of the Warners who are talking to him, and drives him even more crazy, of course. I think at that point he gets launched to Mars or something. He gets blown up, or he just goes so crazy, launches himself to Mars. Makes no sense, but it's just a funny gag type show.
That was a longer segment. The next two segments were really short. One was just it was a song with everyone animated doing goofy stuff called the Monkey Song. It's just kind of it's a song about three monkeys, and it's coming from the perspective of Dr. Scratch and Sniff again, and just how the Warners are driving him crazy. And you're seeing all the other tertiary characters from the show dancing around to the hippos, and Pinky and the Brain kind of come by at one point, and the pigeons, one of the pigeons is playing a flute through the whole thing, while the other pigeon is trying to beat him up for doing it, which is funny.
I mean, that's kind of the whole pigeons thing, the good feathers. It's Squit is the one who's playing the flute, and then Pesto is the one who's just always angry at Squit for always misinterpreting whatever he's saying.
And Bobby's just kind of always trying to be the mediator, but gets in just as much trouble as Squit.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of the straight man of the group, but he kind of just sits to the side.
If you mixed Goodfellas with the Three Stooges, that's basically what those pigeons are.
And adding a little bit of Godfather into it too.
Oh, absolutely.
But I only say that just because of...
Well, they do have the Godfather pigeon.
The Godfeather, yeah.
Yeah, Godfeather. That dude looks ridiculous. I love it.
And he even talks with the whole Marlon Brando thing where you can't really understand him. He's just and
yeah, I think he purposely doesn't say actual words. I think he just does exactly what you said. And then somebody interprets for him.
Right. It's always Bobby who's the big green one.
That's right.
The Godfeather says, and it's great. That was one of my favorite segments, actually. And we don't get to see it in this one or anything, but just overall, I remember one of my favorite segments being the Good Feathers.
Yeah, they're pretty good. After the monkey song, then it goes to we got introduced to all the characters kind of there, but we didn't really get their names. We just saw them. In the next segment, which is just the characters kind of winding down and going to bed for the night. And it's kind of this narrator is Jim Cummings narrating.
Oh, it has to be because it's
using his
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh voice. And it's just kind of like a little like story, like a rhyming story saying goodnight to each character. And there's gags in there like pinking them brain, or instead of going to sleep, they're trying to escape and take over the world as they usually do. And then I don't remember who it was, but who got stuck with Mr. Skullhead in the bed?
Oh, that was Buttons.
Buttons. Okay. Mr. Skullhead is another. It's kind of like Chicken Boo. He's just another ridiculous character that makes no sense. It's this very crudely drawn skeleton that doesn't even look like a skeleton, really, wearing a suit and a derby hat.
Yeah. Like, I think he originated from Elmira's hairpin in Tiny Toons.
I think you're right. But
Mr. Skullhead's role was usually, and we didn't see any of these in the episodes we watched for this episode, but he usually is part of Good Idea, Bad Idea, where
yes,
it gives like a comparison. Oh my God, that's one of my favorite parts. It gives a comparison of like, I'm just going to give you a scenario. Like, Good Idea, playing catch with Grandpa. Bad Idea, playing catch with Grandpa. And it would show him like the first one would be them throwing a football together, and the second one would be him like throwing his grandpa to someone else. It's good stuff. The very small segments, like they're so quick, but they're just little like kind of delightful little highlights for me.
Yeah, those were like less than a minute long. Those were like 30-second clips or something like that. Like I said, these were short too. These were like maybe just a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes for this one. But I liked this last segment though, because you got introduced to each character. You got to find out a little bit about their personality, especially Slappy, because she keeps yelling at the narrator to shut up so she can get to sleep. Yeah. Slappy is a very angry old female squirrel. Like she's a retired Hollywood star, but a squirrel, and she's hates
a
everything.
Grumpy old woman. The next episode we watched for today's show was Super Strong Warner Siblings / Nutcracker Slappy / Wakko's New Gookie. So the first one we've got, and this was my choice because I remember this theme song, not the theme song, but I remember the tune that they used for this first part of the episode because it was a parody of the Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So they're like, super strong Warner siblings, hey, super sibs. And it was like, that's like one of those things that's been stuck in my head since childhood. And so I had to pick this episode only because, not because it was like the best episode or anything, but because it stuck out to me.
What's interesting, this is an episode that I didn't remember this spoof of the Power Rangers, but I loved it. Like, I was just like, oh man, I would have loved that so much as a kid. I was cracking up. They even got like this Rita Repulsa who sounds just like her. I love that.
Oh my gosh, that was one of the best parts, was going up to Rita's castle or tower on the moon, and then she's like, the Warner, and she's just like yelling and like saying the things in like because obviously in Power Rangers, like it's dubbed over like a Japanese voice actress, so she has to talk really fast and like shout really loudly, and so they were mimicking that, and she would even say things like extend things way longer than they needed to be extended, and it was something that I didn't appreciate as a kid as much as I do now because I didn't understand the difference.
I liked all her random like lackeys up there with her too, like the pig that sounded like Goldar. I mean, just to a T, his voice was like Goldar. And then they had like the Scottish Terrier wearing a kilt and a hat for some reason.
Well, he was like the crafter dude who like made all the monsters.
Well, no, there was another guy. He was this little gremlin-looking dude, and he was supposed to be like the crafting guy.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I think the Scottish guy, I think that was supposed to be like, what was the one? Babu? That was the tall blue monkey dude with the like skeleton
with the
wings.
Yep.
Yeah. But man, that was funny. And I love that. So the three Warners, the Warner brothers and their sister Dot, they were teaching like a science class where they were teaching like Einstein level crap to people. And then they got interrupted. They went back to their home base where they had Dr. Scratch and Sniff's head popped up in this, cylinder, it's supposed to look like Zordon. And they're like, why is your mouth all blurred out?
What's wrong with your mouth? It's all fuzzy.
Yeah. Oh, like that.
One of the things that Rita said, she was like, "My warriors, destroy the Warners, goodbye." And it's just like all strung together, like no pauses between her sentences.
Yeah.
One of the ongoing gags too with this one was they're talking to some kids at first. I don't remember what they're telling the kids, but they're just like, "Here, have a bag of money." Like you told them a story, and one of them, and they both liked it, and the other kid's just like, "I liked your story too," and all sad, and then they're just like, here's some fat-free yogurt.
Yes. Oh, that was good.
And it's like that comes around full circle later.
Yeah. So their morphing power, instead of dinosaurs like the Power Rangers, they had a blowfish, which was Yakko, Wakko was Anteater, and Dot was Platypus. Yes. And they got different colored suits, and they had helmets that just looked like their faces with a little something extra. Like it was Dot's face with a duck bill on it, as an example.
Yeah.
The water tower becomes their Megazord. Rita creates this giant bug, and they fight the bug. The bug eventually shrinks, and they just step on it. The studio director that ended up coming, Thaddeus Plotz, who was like, because they were thinking they were going to get congratulated for saving the studio. And he was like, "You ruined it. You ruined everything." Because they did. They destroyed everything during the battle. And then that's when they're like, "Here, have a fat-free yogurt."
Yeah. Instead of the big bag of money.
Yeah.
One thing I want you to add in, and it was really funny, was when they were in the Zord and they kept fighting everything. Every time they would pull off a move, they would be like, "Right." All together. Yeah. And that's totally a Power Ranger thing that I remember them doing. So.
Yeah. You got to move your arms around with the right. Kind of. I love that.
It was awesome.
Yeah. So that was a good segment.
That was that might have been like one of the highlights for me of the 3 episodes we watched for sure.
Yeah, that was good. That was real good.
The next one was Nutcracker Slappy, which was Slappy Squirrel and Skippy Squirrel going along to the Nutcracker music, but kind of just like waking up in the morning and trying to, essentially it was like, it's very literal in the sense that they're trying to crack open this nut, which is breakfast. And what I liked about it was it kind of got a little meta where it's like,
oh yeah,
they step out of the actual scene and kind of like a what's my motivation scenario where it's like, why am I doing this? Like, what is this? And then it's like some young new director, Charlton Woodchuck. Yeah. And he's like, it's part of my contract was when I got old enough, I'd be able to direct. And then so he's directing this and he's trying to be all like philosophical about it and everything. And so she refuses at first, but he's like, "You don't get paid if you don't do it." And then she's like, basically, "Okay, you changed my mind," and went back to doing it. And then the rest of the episode plays out like that's kind of a brief pause in the episode. And then it plays out as if like it was being directed normally, except things are going just crazy and it's driving Charlton insane.
They go to extreme measures like using chainsaws and all kinds of stuff and end up like they're destroying the set in the process. And finally, they get like a bomb specifically made to crack open a walnut, and they shoot the bomb at it, blow it up, and then the walnut cracks open and there's nothing in it. Yeah. And I like that because then Slappy gets super angry.
So Slappy's catchphrase is like, "Now that's comedy." And so that would be the end of like all her episodes. And so it kind of rounds back to that again, where since nothing's inside the shell, she grabs the director, grabs Charlton, and just starts like cramming him inside of the shell. And she's like, "Now there's a nut inside of the shell." And now that's comedy. Yeah. So it's a good payoff for that. And then the last part of this one, Wakko's new Gookie was, so a Gookie are just these weird faces that Wakko makes. It's kind of like puffing his cheeks out and getting like like crazy eyes.
On a whim, I Googled the word Gookie because I thought that I was going to get some sort of really weird sexual thing if I like from Urban Dictionary or something. But Gookie is an actual term used in show business for that exact thing.
Weird. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really old thing. So I'm trying to, Harpo Marx of the Marx Brothers was known for his Gookie.
Oh, you know what? That makes sense because Steven Spielberg has stated that this is basically the inspiration for this was kind of a combination of Looney Tunes and the Marx Brothers or the show in general. So that makes total sense.
In fact, there's this. So the Gookie that Harpo makes is very similar to what Wakko does.
For Wakko, for the purpose of this one, he's trying to find a new Gookie, not because he's gotten tired of the old one or anything, but it's a new season because this is the like second episode of season 3, and he's just like, I want to refresh it, I want to keep things fresh, and so he's going to everybody, like testing them out. And what was really funny, that like the kicker for this episode was everyone keeps like calling it a different thing. Well, Yakko didn't like it at first. He's just like, well, it's really more of a smooky or something. Yes. And then he's like, all right, well, I want a second opinion. So he goes to like the painter Michelangelo, who's a character in this.
It's like just random. That's like the most random person.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Michelangelo with the attitude of Charlton Heston, basically.
Yes.
And so, absolutely. Yeah. So and Michelangelo's like, it's more of a mookie. And then somebody was like, it's kind of a chooky. And I like Katharine Hepburn, like, as a guest appearance too. And she's like, Spencer Tracy used to call it like a zap zippy. He had a way with words.
Yeah.
And
eventually he goes on Larry King, and they're taking phone calls from random people. And it's funny because it's like Rob Paulson for almost every voice during that bit.
Oh yeah.
That cracked me up.
It kind of sounds like his voice that he did for PJ in the Goof Troop.
Yeah, exactly. He goes back and talks to Yakko again, and he had kind of given up. He's going to stick with his old one again. So then Yakko is talking about how he wants to come up with a new catchphrase, and he starts saying stuff. And as he's saying,
Bobberoonie.
Yeah, yes, sirree, Bobberoonie. I remember that one.
I love it.
Well, then there's one more short segment. It's a song about an earthquake. They're singing about an earthquake as it's happening and everything's being
That's
destroyed.
right. Yeah. A quake.
Yeah. I liked that song too. It was actually kind of fun. But
this is one I remember. It's great. Just again, that they get away with so much without really, like, it's one of those where it's like, I didn't say anything bad. I didn't say a curse word. It's just the implication of it. So it's just great stuff. This was a song I remembered actually as well. Not like the whole thing, but I remember like, a quake, da 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 da. I remember the tune to it. Like, there's a lot of tunes that are stuck in my head from this freaking show. So the last episode we watched for today's show was It / Dot the Macadamia Nut / Bully for Skippy. This was season 5, episode 2, and this was the highest rated one.
Yes, it was.
That seems strange to me. Not that I think it was a bad episode, but this was a very slappy, heavy episode.
Yeah, I think I know why. Because and I don't see this as I mean, when you look at the highest rated episodes, it is usually going to be rated by adults, going on IMDb or something like that. I think it's rare that a kid is going back and rating these things,
right.
But this takes a lot of pot shots at the government and the government's censorship of things like television, movies, comics, stuff like that. So I kind of feel like maybe that's why this got the highest rated.
Okay, yeah, I could see that. And again, it was a good episode. It just surprised me that this was the highest rated. But I mean, I looked at it too, and on you were looking on IMDb also?
Yeah, it was tied with another one that was like a 2-parter, which is why I went with this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So so it's tied with another episode as the highest rated. They had the exact same score.
The short was a very interesting one because it was really quick. It was probably the quickest one we've had yet, and it was just it started really cool with these green oozing words or oozing letters for it, and so I'm interested. I'm watching, and then it's got Wakko running through a dark house from something. We're not sure what, but the camera angles keep changing. I'm not sure what it's homaging, but I know that probably just any old horror movie where someone's running from something. And eventually, we see that he's kind of cornered Dot, and then we see Dot come out of the shadows and just tags him, and she's like, "You're it." And that's why it's called It. So it's it's just a gag, but it's a gag that is kind of extended. So
I liked it too.
I did too.
And it's kind of like, I was kind of sad that it wasn't very long, but then again, it's kind of like, well, you can't really get much farther with that joke, you know?
That's something I would really credit them for, is like nothing feels too long or like, oh, it's overdone now. Like that was a perfect amount of time for that joke, because anything more, it would have just been repetition of the same gag. And so it's just like, it comes in, you got your gag, and then it steps out, and it gives you time to remember it and time to let it sink in, as opposed to like playing the whole thing where it's a game of tag. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only other way they could have done that gag is if it got cut off and then you went to a segment, and then in between the segments, it kept coming back to that.
Yeah.
And then
like
by the end of the episode, the "you're it" comes up. Like there's only two ways to play that gag, and they went with the way that makes more sense. Yeah, Animaniacs, I don't think does that too much. I mean, that would have been something like Freakazoid would have done for sure, because they did a lot of that kind of stuff. But I think the way they played it off is totally fine. I liked it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the next one, the Macadamia.
This was, I don't know what year it was when this episode came out, but the 90s in general, if anyone remembers, okay, if you were alive in the 90s, you're going to remember the Macarena. And this was a homage, or not an homage, this was a parody of that. And it's really funny, actually, because it's just Dot singing about how she's called the macadamia nut for various reasons. Like her brothers are saying like she's cracked like a nut, so they call her Macadamia. And everyone the whole time is dancing the Macarena too. And you got Ralph the security guard with like his shirt folded up.
Oh yeah,
so his belly's hanging out.
He was wearing like a belly shirt. Oh.
Yeah, that was good. I liked it actually. As much as like the Macarena is an annoying song, it was funny to see it made fun of like that.
I got to tell you though, I could be on the pro level of performing the Macarena. I'm that good at it. I'm not even kidding, man. I'm super good at it.
It's just the like hands out, hands across, hands on your shoulders, behind your head thing. Is that what it is? I'm doing it right now.
There's several steps to it. There's several steps.
Oh.
You know, it takes someone with real talent to perfect it. So.
I see. I mean, I only knew those steps, so you'll have to show us sometime.
I have performed it in front of 100+ people. I'll have you know.
So what after that was over though, we get to Bully for Skippy, which was probably like a 15-minute episode.
Yeah, this is the bulk of the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. And it was basically what the title describes, where Skippy's getting picked on by a bully at school, but on the other, in the going back to Slappy when she's at home, like the TV critics have like come and I guess it opens with them cracking down on TV violence. And so they're requiring everyone to have like 3 hours of educational entertainment. And then they refer to her like, especially you, Miss Squirrel. And they give her this machine or this like thing that she's supposed to build that's like a non-violent solution to your problems or something.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of two stories are happening at once. She's getting this built out and failing at it, and then it would cut back, and Skippy will come in all beat up, and then like he goes to his counselor, and she's telling him like try to find a peaceful solution by, at first I think it was like ignoring him, and then it was
and then it was trying to be his friend, and then it was trying to be his empathize friend. And
that's right.
And I liked this because that never works, because I was bullied a little bit as a kid. And if you do things like if you ignore it or you try to be their friend, stuff like that, it always gets worse. They always treat you even worse afterwards, because they know that they're like, aha, like I found the crack and now I'm getting in there. So like I had a bully in 7th grade, like he was a bully for me in 6th and 7th grade. And only until in 7th grade, he confronted me once in the hallway. I punched him in the stomach and made him double over. And then all of a sudden he was nice to me from then on, and I never got bullied again from him. So it's just like, yeah, like you can't ignore him. You have to punch somebody.
Now I know kids listen to this show, so don't take my advice from it or Chris's, but sometimes violence is the answer.
Sometimes you just got to punch a guy.
But yeah, to a degree.
Yeah.
Punch him in the gut. That's Chris's advice.
In the gut, like, or a kidney. Kidney's real effective. So, like for those of you that like science, you find out where those kidneys are, and you punch them in the kidney.
Yeah, that would be funny. But I mean, try not to fight though, unless you have to. But sometimes people force you into it, and I get that.
Did you catch the government guys? Did you catch what his name was?
Reef Blunt.
Yes.
Yes. Which is
if that's
hilarious.
Not a pot joke. Oh my goodness.
No, I know, but it's like as a kid, that would have just went right over my head.
Oh
like,
yeah, I totally wouldn't have caught that.
No, that's hilarious. It's so good.
I'm surprised they got away with that again.
Again, yeah. I don't know if they even had any. It's like there's no net. Like the net had such huge gaps in it, they could just put anything through.
You know, some of it too might be that, like, I don't know who the writers were, but they might have been younger writers at the time. They might have been, you know, a little sharper than the people that were censors were. So they might have, like, you know, been able to fly some things under the radar because the censors just didn't understand what the
they didn't
alternative
get the
meanings might
joke.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. Reef Blunt. That one seems hard to miss, but okay.
Yeah, right?
We even get to see like a flashback to when Slappy was young and live in the active in the cartoon community, where she was like, the episode was called Wap Wap Wappy Slappy, and it was in 1940, and it's like she was talking about using a mallet against this other dude and how, again, violence is the answer, at least according to her.
This is probably why I like Slappy. But so like eventually Skippy just keeps getting beat up so bad that he takes Slappy's advice and starts using good old fashioned cartoon violence, tricks his bully into putting on this helmet, which must have been metal, and then he gets a magnetic crane that he keeps turning on and off. So the bully keeps like going up, hitting it, and then he'll turn it off. So he falls down, hits the ground, then turns it on again. Just keeps going up and down.
Oh yeah. Every single time he falls hits the ground, he's just like, ouch. Yeah. Ouch. Ouch. It's funny.
Gives him an exploding boombox that blows him up. Ends up tricking him into putting on a backpack that had a rocket in it, and the rocket shoots him in the air and blows him up like a firework. Yeah. And it works. I mean, it does work because the guy ends up like working for them, building, finishing building the rest of that machine.
That non-violent machine. It was great when it came back to Slappy's house when he was finishing off the machine, and he's all dressed like a proper like schoolboy now. Yeah. And he's like, "Thank you both for showing me the error of my ways." And she's just like, don't get mushy on us. We actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
He had that like real angry side eye look going on right there.
Yeah.
And it just panned away from him, but I thought that was funny. Right. So then the government guy and the counselor both show up at the same time. They're furious that one, that Skippy used violence and that Slappy encouraged the violence and then therefore had violence on TV. So then she shoves them inside of that non-violent machine. But what it is all the violence is contained within the machine. So you're just not seeing the violence.
So it's off screen.
Yeah. So it shoves them in there. And like, I mean, once they come out, the counselor is all like, I mean, looks like she's been burned, like just looks awful. The guy looks like he's been killed and brought back to life. Like he looks like a zombie because his skin's like greenish blue and stuff. And his eyes are yellow. I'm like, whoa.
I think the counselor was played by Tress MacNeille, who plays Dot, and the government agent was played by Rob Paulson.
Oh yeah, you can hear it in their voices easy.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that was fun. I liked the whole like just making fun of the government and all of their anti-violence kind of things. So because we talked about in the last episode we did on Dungeons and Dragons, that's like, one person does something wrong and then the government jumps all over everything and it's like, oh my God, they're exposed to all these things and this is what causes it. It couldn't be anything else. Couldn't be just this kid is a jerk. It's got to be that this kid was influenced by this horrible, violent cartoon where like a cat hit a mouse with a mallet,
Yeah, exactly.
Like that caused him to assault a teacher. It's just stupid. But anyway.
Yeah, it is good them poking fun at that. And then at the end, she's like, now that's edutainment.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
So for a longer segment, it worked really well. Like, I'm glad it was as long as it was because it needed that time to build up to the payoff.
Yeah, it was for it being more Slappy than any of the other characters. It was a really good one.
I'd go far enough to say this might be her best segment out of the whole show.
For her,
Possibly.
yeah, I would say so. I think so.
Yeah. Well, Chris, looks like it's about time we bust our inner kids out of the water tower, and just for fun, we'll let them run around the water movie a lot with Yakko, Wakko, and Dot, so they can tell us what they thought of Animaniacs.
This cartoon was pretty fun. I mean, the Warners can get kind of annoying, but there's so many characters to watch and love, and there's something for everyone. Plus, it's an advocate for my favorite thing in the whole world, comedic violence. So I gave this cartoon 4 bowls of Gookie cereal out of 5.
This sample platter of short comedy skits was the best possible way they could have approached this show. Although the full weight of the jokes and references went over my 8-year-old head, the visual gags, high energy, and catchy musical numbers were more than enough to keep me hooked. With so many characters, a few of the side ones are definitely forgettable, but the majority are all golden, and Wakko was my absolute favorite. Overall, I'd give Animaniacs 5 big bowls of Mookie Gookie Chookie cereal out of 5, and think it's a definite watch for anyone with a sense of humor. I'll close with this. Good idea. Bringing back Animaniacs as soon as possible with the same primary cast and general feel of the show, including Wheel of Morality and that one Mr. Skullhead bit about the contending quality of ideas. Bad idea. Not doing everything I just listed, or playing catch with your grandpa.
It's true. They're bringing Animaniacs back, I assume with the original cast, but I don't know what all characters are going to be involved. I mean, you'll have the Warners for sure, but I don't know if they'll have all the other bits like Slappy or Pinky and the Brain or any of those characters that they got rid of, like Rita and the dog I keep forgetting whose name. Runt, and then, the Good Feathers and stuff. I don't know what their plan is, just that they're bringing it back.
Yeah, I have no idea. And I listened to Rob Paulson's weekly podcast, the Talking Toons, on the Nerdist Network, and he's kind of, I'm sure he knows more than he's letting on, but he's just like, yeah, they're bringing it back. And basically, I hope they'll cast me, because you never know what's going to happen with the whole business side of things. But yeah, I mean, I definitely hope that he'll be. It would be crazy to not have at least the 3 primary cast members back. I know they're going to have to modernize it some, but it needs that at its core.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they don't bring back the original at least 3, then I don't think they should do it, because it just wouldn't, I don't know, it just wouldn't be as good. I think too many people have seen it too recently for them to reboot it and not bring the original cast back already. It's just not enough time has passed for it, I think.
Why even call it Animaniacs if you're not going to have the primary cast?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Maybe they'll be all ducks again.
Oh, yeah. Bring them back to platypi.
Just bring back all the platypuses. Do you have any final thoughts on Animaniacs before we're out of here?
It's a show that it's never really left my mind, not just my subconscious, but my conscious mind. Periodically throughout a day or a month or a week or whatever, there will be at least one point that I'll just think of something from Animaniacs, almost in the same way that I do The Simpsons, where it's I can relate whatever I'm going through right now or whatever I've just seen to one of those shows, because those were, that's what I was raised on. And that's what, I gathered a lot of my sense of what comedy, or what I took as comedy from those shows. So, those combined with Tiny Toon Adventures and things like that, that was my childhood. Again, it hasn't left my conscious mind since, and I still have so many of those songs in my head forever. On my deathbed, I will be still singing one of them, probably the Chicken Boo one, because that's very fresh always. And it's just a great show. If you haven't seen it, please, I know it's from the 90s, but it's so good. It's the best of the 90s. And that's saying something, because the 90s didn't have a lot of great things to it. But that was that was possibly the best cartoon, along with Batman the Animated Series. So, which are definitely different types of cartoons. Go watch Batman, watch Animaniacs, and report back. You will enjoy yourself. I can't see anybody not liking it. If you don't like this show, I don't know if we can be friends. That's how I feel about it.
No, you just broke up with all of our listeners. Yeah, so, I mean, Animaniacs isn't my favorite cartoon by any means. It's not one that I plan to keep on watching, but it was a really fun nostalgia trip to watch this again. I forgot how many meta jokes there were and how many jokes were hidden in there for adults that, I definitely wouldn't have picked up as a kid. So those are really surprising. And even though I only gave it a 4, I really appreciated what I saw. And that what they were going for, which was kind of like an over-the-top nod to older cartoons, like in the style of Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry. And I just think that's really awesome. Like they captured this spirit of older cartoons and mixed it with something that at the time was contemporary. So I'm hoping that with the reboot, they'll be able to capture that again. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, if they can work the same kind of magic they've worked with Voltron, then it's all golden. I mean, not that Animaniacs was like an old cheesy show or anything, but if it could get even better, if that's even possible, I would love to see it. And something I wanted to say before we close out was that observing our show over the period of time we've been doing it, because I don't remember how long we've been doing it, observing this show, I see now that we have, on day 1, we probably get like 150 or so listeners at least by the afternoon. And so that's such a cool thing to me that I would love for some of the listeners to like reach out and follow us or follow me personally on something like on Instagram or Twitter. Are
you trying to commandeer the listeners? Like, follow me personally.
Yeah, follow me personally. And
Come
then
to my house.
We can be friends. I want to be friends with you. As long as you like Animaniacs, I want to be friends. So
buy him dinner.
Yes, my Twitter and my my Instagram are both at Lucky Jojo. So please, if you want to be friends, if you like Animaniacs, reach out.
There you go. Reach out. I don't like friends. So
no, Chris doesn't like friends. He keeps it private.
I don't like people.
And you'll hear the rest of our stuff for social media at the end of the episode. But that's my personal stuff. So if you want to be friends, reach out. I'd love to have you.
Nope.
Well, listeners, it looks like our milk supply is now run dry. So it's time for us to say goodbye. And next week, we'll be watching
Megas XLR, suggested via Facebook, I think, by David Bond.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I know David. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, David.
So thank you, Harley Sally Gorales, for suggesting this show. I loved it. I still love it, and I always will.
Thanks, Harley, Sally, Alice, all 4 of you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your work.
What if those are her split personalities?
Could be. Just like mine. I don't name mine, though, because that gives them power.
Well, they're all just Chris. Like, your personalities aren't original. They're just all Chris.
That's true.
Yeah. And once again, I'm Joseph.
And I'm one of the Chris.
And we'll see you next Saturday.
Presented by Nerdsloth,
a place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows. Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.